are for another episode of Asking for a Friend here on Leading Young. Once again, my name is Eric Lyday. So glad that you are joining us here today for the Leading Young podcast. And of course, it wouldn't be a Leading Young podcast and an Asking for a Friend episode if the Hayden Paninsky and Savannah Estes were not with us, joining us to dive into these questions that you have sent. So we've got 4 more questions that we're going to get into. But of course, before we do that, we need to tell you how to stay updated with Leading Young. So if you haven't, you can do that at leading-young.com. Enter your email to subscribe and stay up to date with everything that's happening. You can always find us on Twitter and Instagram at leading_young, and then on Facebook at Leading Young Blog. That's it. That's on Facebook. So you can do that. Follow us on there, like, subscribe, and share. And so we've got some new blog posts up this week that you can, if you are a leader of especially a church looking to get your volunteers back activated, we've got a blog post on there that may help you do that, give you some ideas for that. So be sure to check that out. You can find that at leading-young.com. All right. So let's get into another episode of Asking for a Friend. If you're just joining us for the first time or you've been doing this, basically this series has been based all around the questions that you all are asking. Young adults are asking. I personally have asked 0 of these questions. These are questions that have either been sent in or have been asked by young adults that are in our young adult group here at Central, and some of them have been emailed in from you, our listeners. So we've had a lot of fun. We've learned a lot, actually, from just kind of having to dive into these questions. So we're looking forward to tackling a few more of them today. But first, let's check in. Savannah, how are you? We see Duke is joining you today.
Yes.
Introduce us to your dog. I don't know if we've met
This,
Duke yet on this podcast.
you have, just not officially. He's usually on my lap. This is Duke. He was at his Grammy's house for the past 3 days, and so now that he's home, he just wants to sit on my lap.
Yeah,
like the whole time he's home. So that's what's going on. But besides that, I'm doing okay, I guess I'd say. I'm like sad that we're stuck here for another month, but it's sunny, so that helps.
the weather is changing, so that's been good. Hayden, you've been trying to tame and capture a fox, if I understand. You want to give us some background on that?
Yeah.
Tame?
I have, as of yesterday, I've had this fox eating out of my hand. So it's going well. So, yeah, I had a groundhog issue. I took care of the groundhog. The foxes moved into the groundhog's hole and it had some babies. And, I was cleaning some fish yesterday or the day before, and I just look over and this little fox is staring at me. So I was like, you know what, let's give this a shot. So I went over there and I named him Neil. So there's that. But yeah, hopefully.
Maybe Neil and Duke can be friends someday.
Let's hope.
A regular Fox and the Hound?
Yeah.
That was always what a great movie about real friendship. And so there we go. Yeah, maybe Neil and Duke. What a pair that would be. All right, well, let's jump into these questions, and we're gonna first be kind of looking at this idea of control. Obviously, over the last 6 weeks, we all have been learning a lot about control and really just how little control we actually have over a lot of things. But this question asks basically how or what are ways that you can start to give things over to God. So we're talking about things that we have felt like we've always controlled or had control of, that we don't necessarily give over to God, or maybe we think we're giving it over to God, but we haven't really. So what are some ways that you feel like you have successfully turned over control to God in areas? Or maybe you feel like you haven't, but I'm just curious. Hayden, how about you?
Is the question for in this quarantine or overall?
I would say overall. If you want to focus on quarantine, you can, but I think it's more of a overall statement.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like I'm not a controlling person in the slightest. So, but we have talked about this, several times, even on this podcast, about control and how it runs our life or vice versa. I will say though, I'm not a planner, and I do that on purpose most of the time. Talking to several people who may be planners, I feel like the less I plan, the less I'm in control. And I kind of do that for a reason. And because growing up, people in sixth grade already know what they're going to be when they get older. And stuff like that kind of bothered me because there's no way. I mean, I guess there is a way what you're going to do, but, have their whole life planned out till they're retired and they're 12 years old or 20. And it's just like, that's not,
Yeah.
that's not, I don't think that's a good thing. I think it's fine to have ideas of what you want to be and whatever, but you can't hold on to that so tightly that if God's telling you to move this way, you don't because of what your plans are. So that'd be my first answer, and I'll ponder my second one.
So that was pretty much a direct attack of your lifestyle. So
No offense.
I'll let you respond.
Wait, say the question one more time.
Basically, what are some ways that you have been able to successfully feel like you've given over control to God in certain areas?
I think, obviously, I'm different than Hayden, where I have had my life planned out since the 7th grade. And I think I'm decent. Like, I'm good at, I wouldn't say good because I could definitely be better, but I try to listen to like where God's calling me. Like, I try not to like have my plans dictate, but I like to have a plan. Like I do. But I think one area where, especially during quarantine, like giving over to God is like just literally my day-to-day routines. Like, I am such a structured person, and like at the beginning of this I was freaking out, and still even a little bit, because things are just so different than what I'm used to. But I don't really know if this is the right answer, but for me, like giving that over, I've just been literally praying a lot, and just like for God to give me peace. Like, I've kind of already accepted that things are not going to happen how I want them to last month, this month, maybe next month. But just like praying for peace, because it is hard for me to give up control and to not know what's happening, like just my personality. So just praying that I can just calm down about it. Like, it's okay, you're going to be okay. And I think that has been the biggest way of like giving something over to God, especially during quarantine, is just like asking him to help me chill out, like just chill. So
Yeah. And I think it would be very important, I feel like, for me right now to talk about tithing and this control here, and how, somehow through this whole thing, me and my wife are still tithing a solid 10%, and somehow we actually may have more money than normal, which makes no sense. But we made that decision a while back when we started Rooted in last fall or whatever, to fully commit and tithe the full 10%. And ever since, it makes no sense because, like you said, your wife's a teacher, my wife's a teacher, Sav's a teacher. We all know that teachers don't get paid that much. And then I work here like you, and I don't get paid that much. But somehow, even after you cut a 10% off that somehow wasn't there before, now is gone, and we have more money. So it's crazy that God can, use that if you actually let go of the reins and give him what is his, and then it just all falls into place.
yeah, I would definitely back up the tithing thing, because that's one thing. Sometimes I forget that that's like one of my strongest testimonies is tithe, because like growing up, like we didn't have a lot of money and for a lot of different things. And so as I got older and like got a job and got my own money, like financial security was something I wanted so bad, and I was scared like to give up money ever. Like, I didn't spend money on anything, and still like everyone always gives me a hard time because I like don't turn my heat on in the winter because I don't want to pay for it. But so whenever I like first got into the whole Jesus thing, tithing was like something I was like, there's no way I can give 10% of my paycheck. Especially when I was in high school and only making like $200 a month. I was like, I can't give 10% of that up. But I was just telling my Rooted group the other day when we were talking about money, and that's like one thing I gave over to God a while ago, like that I have been faithful to 10% for almost 5 years now. And that like same thing, like there are times when I should not make it, like I shouldn't have enough money to make ends meet. and I always do. And I always think I was telling my reader group too, it's kind of funny how it's not always in monetary money how you make it. Like I'll give my 10% and be like, well, I'm not gonna be able to buy groceries this month. That's fine. But then literally I have 3 people call me that week and be like, hey, we have leftovers. Do you want us to drop them off for you? And it's like just little things like that that I like seek God's hand in. And I always talk about too when I talk about tithe. There's times like over the summer where I'm going on all these vacations or I'm out of town and I'll tell myself, oh, I'll just tithe when I get back. And then I don't. And then like that next week, I'll be like super tight on money. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it to the next paycheck. I'm like, oh, I should have tithed. Like I should have trusted God with that 10% and he would have carried me through this week. And that's like something that's like persistent. I feel like a pattern, like when on the weeks, cause I tithe weekly. On the weeks that I slip up on that tithe, I'm like, oh, like I can feel this. I can feel me disobeying God and like reaping the repercussions of that. Reaping the repercussions. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but tithing is definitely like something I give over to God and like has been very evident. Like I can see the fruits of that for sure.
Yeah, and right now, I mean, obviously, nobody probably feels like they're sitting in a very comfortable financial position right now. I mean, even if you're still getting paychecks or you're still working, there's just still a lot of unknowns right now as what's gonna happen and how many months this is gonna carry on. But I do think what's interesting with control is I feel like especially in the last 6 weeks I've learned a lot about control and my desire for it, and I'm learning how to loosen up on that. But I think kind of like Hayden had mentioned, the tithing thing. I really think obedience plays a bigger part than we often talk about in our Christian faith. We don't always like to talk about this obedience side of things because it's not the fun part, right? This idea of being obedient to somebody else or submitting, or those aren't the fun, cool ways to describe it. But I think when we turn over control, that's an act of obedience. God calls us to give it all to Him. When we turn over our plans, we turn over our finances. That we do that not just because we're told to, but because we trust Him that He can do better with it than we can, and we trust that our obedience will be, I don't want to use the word rewarded, but in this case I'm going to use the word rewarded. And I think a lot of times that reward comes in the idea of peace. And I think when we find peace, like Hayden talked about, right now they really shouldn't have more money, but right now they're finding peace in their finances in a time when there really should be no peace about that. I know if you watch Central Service last week, I kind of talked about that with me and my wife. We talked about that. Like right now, we should be really concerned over our finances, but for whatever reason right now, we just kind of have a peace about it, that everything is going to be okay. And so I think when we look at these situations that we're trying to control, I think if we would just kind of think what it could look like for me to turn that over to God, to be obedient to God's plan in that scenario. And then I think our reward from that is peace over that lack of control that we have. And so I think that applies to finances, but I really think that applies to everything, our schedules, our life plans, our, you name it. I think it applies to it. So we're all learning how to control less, I guess, right now, or be in control less. But any other thoughts with that one? No? All right. Sav, you're going to say something.
I don't know. I don't think what I was going to say is going to make sense. So just go on.
All right. Let's go to, let's flip the script here a little bit. And we're going to go to Revelation 21:4. And this verse reads that He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, not crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. So basically right here, we're talking about, if you've ever read Revelation, we're kind of talking about new earth here, heaven, this time when we kind of experience heaven. And so the question is here, when we get to this place, this new earth, heaven, how could we not be sad about the ones we love not making it to heaven with us? Does this mean we don't care enough?
I think, I think we just try so hard to have an earthly understanding of what heaven's going to be like and like what feelings will be like up there. But like, to put it kind of bluntly, you could study what heaven will be like every single day of your life for 200 years and you would not even come close to it. Like, you cannot, your brain cannot come up with it. Your brain cannot not materialize, imagine what will heaven will be like. And so I think trying to understand heavenly feelings too is the same situation. Like, the Bible says, like, there's no sadness in heaven. Like, you are not like, no matter how much you love someone on earth, you are not capable of feeling sadness when you're in heaven that they're not there. Like, it just isn't possible. And I think I don't think it has anything to do with how much you care. Like, I think that is putting a lot of unnecessary, like, pressure on yourself to feel something like in heaven, like when you don't need to feel that. But kind of like how we talked about at EM last night, if anything, it should like light a fire in you now to like help people get to heaven. But I just think trying to understand what heaven's going to be like when you're not there and no one has ever been there and no one can tell you for sure what it's like is like a almost like I said this last night too, like a waste of time. Like, you're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to imagine what heaven is like or like try to understand the feelings that you'll have there. And so like spend your time here on earth trying to get people to heaven, not trying to figure out how you cannot be sad in heaven. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think just the amount of excitement and joy or whatever adjective you want to throw in there that's going to happen is going to it possibly could be there, but it would outweigh it so much that it almost cease to exist, the difference in between the two. And I think just the idea of hearing well done, good and faithful servant, compared to I've left somebody behind, it just counterbalances in a way that you couldn't imagine.
Yeah, and there's obviously as Christian, we have a responsibility. Jesus gave us our kind of our one mission, to go and make disciples. And I think heaven, kind of like Savannah said, heaven is a place that we really can't fathom. We can read what, little kind of the Bible, well, I should say little, but what, the Bible, gives us some ideas of what it could be like, but we just, we can't imagine the overwhelming joy that is going to take place in that. But I do think I think that it needs to, I think this brings up the idea of why would we wait for heaven to be sad about it? Like, let's be sad about that idea now. Like, why aren't we, we have the opportunity to be reaching these people, to try to take as many people with us. Now, we can't control other people's decisions. That's not we don't get to decide that. We aren't the ones that even do the transforming, right? That's Jesus' job. But I think more of this question makes me think, am I really doing everything in my power to make sure all the people that I would want to be in heaven with me are going to be there right now? Let's not wait until I get to heaven to figure out how I did. Let's take care of that now. And because in heaven, it's just, honestly, it's not going to probably be a thought of ours. We're going to be busy doing a lot of other things that are going to be really, really great. I do think it is, though, interesting. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on this. I do believe that we will, know people in heaven and we will recognize people. I do believe that. And so, to me, that's even makes me even more excited to know that the place that I'm going to spend eternity, the people that I know and care about will be there. And to me, that's comforting. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that.
I always just think it's like a cool concept to think about. One, because like I just really hope Princess Diana's in heaven because I want to meet her. but two, to think about like just the earthly friendships that we have, like even like us three, like we're friends, we get along, and like, but thinking about what friendships like this, like what us three would be like in heaven whenever we have like no jealousy, no like I don't know, like all the earthly things that like hinder us from having perfect relationships on earth. Like it just makes me excited for heaven to have like heavenly relationships where like
We'll be
no
doing
bad things are present.
a Leading Young podcast in the
Yes,
heavenly. This is
direct from
coming to you
heaven.
live from the Heaven Studios.
I don't know if you heard that, but I'm pretty sure Sav said she was jealous of me and you, Eric.
No,
That's the
I
only
knew
word.
that was
There was that was the one word
I
that
was
came out of
Yeah.
all
I was
the
more insinuating that you guys were jealous of me.
Yeah.
right.
But I think that
Jealousy
ties
was just the first thing I thought of.
perfectly what you said, Eric, earlier about to last week's podcast. You need to go back and give it a listen if you didn't, about making the most of every opportunity, and the almost the urgency behind what we're doing.
Yeah, I think, especially in the time we live in now, like we are in such, I always hate to, it's so hard to phrase this because obviously the situation we're in now, it's a terrible situation. People are losing their lives. You never want to you never want to take a situation like this and say, like we have to take advantage of this because obviously, we don't want anybody to have to, pass away or anything like that. That's all very sad. There's a lot of people mourning. But at the same time, it is the situation we're living in. So we have to figure out how best can we carry out the mission in this time. And I think right now that we have got it, there's just such a big opportunity. And we should have a new sense of urgency more than ever before. Because if anything, this has showed us how fragile life is and how in literally a moment things can flip upside down. And so, it's definitely a realization to me of how little urgency that I often show in this area. And it's very convicting to me to think about, like, if I was to list out, 10 people or whatever that I want to be there, it would be convicting probably how little effort I've put into making sure those 10 are going to be there with me. And so I think if anything, hopefully this verse doesn't disappoint us, that we'll be sad that people may not be in heaven with us. I think hopefully more this will motivate us to make sure that they can be there with us when that day comes. All right, let's shift gears into a completely different direction from this one. We got another scripture question here, and this one comes from Matthew 5:31 and 32. Matthew 5:31 and 32. And basically we're talking about divorce here. So I'll let you can look that up and read that. But 5:31 through 32, this is Jesus basically talking about divorce. And the question here is divorce okay or not? Why or why not? And what or where is the line? Simple
Awesome.
question.
It is so simple.
Simple question.
Well, I guess I'll take the lead on this.
Great.
So I am blessed enough that I have lived with both my parents, because both my parents, they split when I was young, real young. But I'm lucky enough that they're better friends now than when they were married, and that my stepfather is a strong Christian man and made my mom even more of a Christian lady, if that's possible, but so divorce is something I know a lot about, in my life. And is divorce okay is a hard question, because, the generations like to put a lot of things on our generation, but the generation that had us has probably had the start of divorces, because before that, divorces really weren't a thing. So we're living in a culture where divorce is normal, or almost gonna happen. If it's 50% or whatever it is now, higher than that. I don't know the actual percentage.
It's about just shy of 50%.
Which is
right
just
now.
nuts.
Like about 40. I mean, we're talking, like, when I say just shy, like 49%.
Yeah, because if you went to 1930, not even 100 years ago, I bet that rate is half of that, if not less than half of that.
Yeah.
I would say way less. Yeah.
So it's a new concept pretty much that's happening now that wasn't happening when the Bible was written. So is divorce okay? It's still no, but actually I don't want to put a but on that. I take my butt back. I don't want to put a but on that. Is divorce okay? The answer is no. It's not.
I think I have a lot to say about this.
Go ahead.
My first thing being like, I know nothing about marriage, so maybe I shouldn't have an opinion about divorce either. But I kind of talked about it at YAM how like I think I agree with Hayden. Divorce is not okay. Like I think a lot of the time you should try to work it out, no, almost no matter the situation, which is hard for me to say because like I always just there's always like that one like well, what about in this situation? Like I never really know about like if there's like domestic violence going on, is that okay? I don't think that's okay, but like I think that the Bible is very clear that you're supposed to stick by your partner and like try to work through things. But I I want to include like yeah, the divorce rate is 50%, but how I would be curious to know like how many of those divorces were from homes where like God was the center of the relationship. And so I think as a Christian, especially as a single one, like hopefully one day be married, um, like just going into a marriage knowing that like God should be the center of it, I think doesn't obviously get rid of marriage problems, but like would helps tremendously with like the fact of not having divorce as an option, like always trying to work through it. I don't know. But I wanted to say too, like I think the important thing to come out of this is not whether or not divorce is okay, because I think the Bible is very clear that it's not. Like you're meant for one person, and like once you marry them, like and God is your witness, like that's it. I think it's important to know that like all of your like that would be considered a sin. Divorce would be, but like all of your sins are like forgivable. And because I always think like for me to ask this question, is divorce okay? Like I'm like, okay, no, it's not okay. Okay, that's fine. Like I just won't get divorced when I get married. But then if you are asking someone who is married and is getting beat every single day, is divorce okay? And then for me to look them in the face and say, absolutely not, don't leave your husband. That's like that's unfair for me to like put that weight on them. And then also for someone to say who's been divorced 3 times, but very much loves Jesus, for me to look them in the face and say, no, like you're a sinner. Like, I just think that is connotation the right word? I think like I would definitely say the answer is no, divorce is not okay. But I think we just have to remember like with that answer to have grace in the way that Jesus would. Like divorce, I would say no, divorce is not okay, but divorce doesn't make you a bad person or like going to hell. Does that make sense? Because like Hayden, like my parents are divorced too, but I still think my mom is a good woman and like deserves to go to heaven.
Well, I think it's it's important to remember there's a lot of things that the Bible says it's not okay.
Right.
There's, and this is one of them. But at the same time, there's a reason that Jesus went to the cross to die for us. I think, the frustrating thing about divorce for me is, I can't believe that a loving God that we have, would force someone to stay in a relationship that they are, abused mentally, physically, in a way. Like I just don't, or, of course, in this scripture, it will specifically mention, adultery or sexual sin. But I do think, that number 50% didn't reach up to 50% because all of a sudden a bunch of people were cheating on each other and a bunch of people were beating on each other. That's not how we got to that number. Now that unfortunately that is probably a part of some of them. But, I think we don't take, because I think God is not the center of a lot of marriages. We don't take those vows very seriously, and it's very easy. It's very easy in marriage to not always. Marriage is hard. It's very hard, and it would be really easy to quit if you weren't very committed. It would be very easy to to throw in the towel. And I think, unfortunately, there's too many people that are willing to throw in the towel far too early just because they're not happy. We talked about happiness last week. Just because they're not happy or they're not feeling it anymore, or this person's this and this person's that. So, I think I agree with you guys. I mean, obviously it's pretty clear here, divorce is not okay, but it doesn't mean that you can't be okay. It doesn't mean that, God doesn't forgive you, or God will treat you any differently. Your divorce is no different than my lying, or your divorce is no different than my jealousy, or, whatever. It's not, we just, at some point, I don't know when it started, at some point, we got really good at weighting sin, that some sins were more important or worse than others. And unfortunately, I think divorce is kind of one that, honestly, it's a lot of the sins that are public. If it's a public sin, then I think we think that weights more because people know about it. People see it. You get pregnant out of marriage, people make a big deal of that. Why? Because they can see it. It's not any different than me gossiping all the time, but nobody can see that, but they can see a pregnant belly and a kid that you're carrying around for the rest of your life. So, well, you don't have to carry it the rest of your life, but you know what I mean? Maybe you could, but could be like that big baby on TikTok that I still have nightmares about from seeing that. But yeah, so I think really, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. Divorce, if it can be mended, mend it and do everything you can to mend it. Obviously a marriage is two people, takes two people on a common, if one person is not gonna be willing to mend it, then there's not a whole lot you can do really. But I think when you can mend it, you should do everything you can if it's mendable. And but I think if divorce happens, you just need to realize that it doesn't change how God sees you. It doesn't change that God loves you, and it doesn't change that God has gone to a cross and forgiven you. So I don't know if you guys have anything else to add to that, but
no, I mean, it's just like that. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. And then my parents' divorce situation wasn't great. It may have been meant for bad, but it has been such a blessing for me because now I have two father figures, earthly father figures, and it has helped me drastically become who I am. So, I mean, there are good things that can come out of it.
mm-hmm.
It's not the end of the road in most cases. It's just, a stepping stone on a path.
Yep. So let's end with this last question, and this will kind of be kind of an upbeat question that we can hopefully end on. But this person wrote in. This was an emailed in question. It said, "I'm struggling to see God in our current situation. They're just curious. So, what are some ways that everyone is seeing Him through this situation? So, what are some ways that you've seen God work, whether it's personally or just like you feel like something that you've seen happen in the world or the, United States, whatever, that you can kind of point to and say, I feel like I see God working there."
I mean, you kind of changed the question on me from what I thought you were going to ask, but I love seeing like the videos of hospitals, like the people praying on the roofs or people showing up in their cars and honking horns just for people. I love seeing all of the good that is out there sometimes on social media. I would say stay off of it, but that's a different conversation. But I love, I love seeing God in situations like that. You know what I mean? The creative, like we were talking about last week, creative ideas that people are having, and you can see God work through that.
I would definitely say,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it's all you.
Just personally, like, it's like obviously a lot of free time. And I've said a couple times on the podcast, I think, like I live by myself, so I'm just chilling most of the time. But it's just offered a lot of time for like a lot of self-reflection, which has not necessarily been maybe the greatest because I like realized a lot of things about myself I would like to change. But I think like seeing God in that of like all these like just getting more into my Bible and praying more and listening more, and just like, I guess I would say like hearing God more, like speak over my future and stuff like that, has just been a way for me personally. Just like kind of, one of my friends texted me the other day, she's like, hey, what's something I can pray for you about? And I was like, just for my future, because I feel like God's telling me maybe things aren't going to be like what I thought they were. And so just, I think that it's like I would compare it to like growing pains. Like it hurts. Like I don't want God to be telling me these things, but also like I'm thankful for like this time where He is telling me these things. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Did you just segue back to question 1, Sab?
Call
Not
that
even
a
knowing
full
it.
circle.
Right in your plan.
Yeah, I think for me personally, and I've mentioned it on here, and in blog posts and different things like that, I definitely see God working in me. Just He's been realigning priorities, which really needed to happen in my life, and I can see how He is absolutely giving me kind of revelations and things and areas that that I need to prioritize more than things I had been prioritizing. And so, that is definitely one personal area that I've seen God work in my life during this time. Just as a global church, it's interesting to see how, our churches are closed right now. I mean, like pretty much all over the world, churches are not, quote, the doors are not open. And I don't think there's probably ever been a time that more people have heard about the message of God than right now. And to think about that is kind of mind-boggling a little bit. Like our buildings are literally closed, and there's never been a point in history when more people are hearing about the message of God and are maybe open to looking at it. And so to me, it's exciting. It's kind of nerve-wracking because it feels like a lot of pressure a little bit to like, how do we take, again, I hate to say we're taking advantage of this, but how do we, this opportunity that God is using, the situation that God is using, it's our responsibility to kind of come alongside that and grasp it. And so it's nerve-wracking and exciting all at the same time. But I just think, obviously our country is really divided right now. It was divided before this. It may, something that probably should have united us, it seems to be dividing us even more. But I think, just seeing how the church and churches have been able to kind of partner with their communities through this has just kind of opened the door to some relationships and partnerships that may not have existed before this. So I've really liked seeing that. I think just the creativity of the way the message is being spread right now is really unique. And so I think we can see God moving in this situation. It may not always be easy, but I do think that we can see it. So any other thoughts with that?
Sure. I'm going to give you kind of an odd, maybe an old school answer, but like,
no way.
I know who would have thought it. But just like the other day when I was working at your house, like laying retaining wall blocks, like,
which looks great, by the way.
Thanks.
Shout out to receding.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But like
get back to me on my request, but it's fine.
Yeah, our secretary's out. But like I see God in situations like that. I'm hitting a brick on some gravel on dirt sitting underneath a tree, but yet I don't even see him, but I almost like feel him. And you drive through your neighborhood and people are like in their yard watering flowers or mowing their grass, or everybody's home. I don't know, but somehow I can like feel it. And I'm driving in my car and the radio's off, just looking, at a stoplight. It's weird.
Well, I think to that point, statistically it's showing that, but people are desiring offline interaction right now. Like we've never missed people more than we do right now. Right. We miss them to the point of we're actually willing to pick up the phone and call them instead of text them or
on a
just
landline.
Snapchat them. Yeah. On our home phone.
I got a letter in the mail the other day from one of my friends, like that doesn't live in Mount Vernon, obviously. And I was like, oh my gosh, a letter. This is so exciting.
I mean,
I was
we're
excited
mailing.
to read a handwritten letter.
Yeah, I mean, like my daughter, her favorite time of the day right now is mail time, when the mail lady gets there, because like she's been getting a lot of little notes from her friends and stuff, and she loves going to the mail and checking the mail and getting a letter. And I just think, like, I think that this time has kind of reset us a little bit to the point of almost simpleness, and I think that is that's good. Like, that's a good thing. We were all so busy, and our intake was so much. Like we were just overwhelmed by all the things we were taking in, and just everything was so loud. The noise around us is so loud, and we've been forced to quiet down. And things are going to go back to a form of normal. We don't know what that looks like, but I mean, we're going to go back to work at some point. Our buildings are going to open up. I mean, things are going to happen, and they're going to look a lot of the ways similar to what we know them. And in some ways they will be different, but I hope that some of these elements that we're experiencing now stick around. Just the kind of the uniting of communities. You check on your neighbors. You have conversations with your neighbors now because you're both outside doing stuff. We've had, what day are we on? Like 50 or whatever. I think out of the 50 days, we've had like, we're on like 45 consecutive family dinners in a row. Like, and that, I mean, literally before this, I couldn't tell you the last time that in my household that we had all sat down and ate dinner at, well, A, the kitchen table, not the living room, or B, at the same time together. And I mean, it's just, it's really, in my house now, me and my wife played Scrabble the other night. Like, we got out a board game and we played a board game, and it was a blast. She kicked my butt. That wasn't fun, and I won't let it happen again. But it was fun. Me and my daughter she knows that now at night, like we do family movie night, and it's like every night has been family movie night for 60 days or whatever, however many days. It's every night is family movie night now, but it's like, it's still fun to see, just all the time that we've had. So I think we could kind of wrap up with that. Any other closing thoughts?
I would just like to say Sav has yawned like 30 times.
Oh, she's going to take a nap. It always happens when I talk. I don't know what the deal is with that.
I went to bed at a decent time too, and I slept like pretty late. I don't know why I'm so tired.
Oh, there you go. Get out. You got to get up moving. Get the blood circulating. So, all right. Well, thank you all for another episode of Asking for a Friend here at Leading Young. Next week, we're going to be taking a break, and we're going to do something a little different the following week, just because we're going to be transitioning. I think we'll be back because we've received more questions, so we will be doing this more, but next week's going to look a little different. So looking forward to that. But as always, thank you for listening to another episode of Asking for a Friend presented by Leading Young. Really appreciate Savannah and Hayden, you guys taking some time to hang out, and Duke. If he's still with us, appreciate him, of course, as always. So again, check us out, leading-young.com. Check out the blog post we had this week on how to digitize your volunteers. That's going to be something that a lot of churches are going to need to look into over the next several months. So be sure to check that out. Connect with us on social media. We'd love to connect with you there. And as always, this has been another Leading Young podcast by young leaders for all leaders. Have a great day.